Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Leader. I'm very excited today to have three amazing guests in the SEO field. Let's say it that way, humbly. Just before starting, I would like to make a little bit of promotion for each of those three experts. I will start by Andy. Andy is the founder of Orbit Media, as everybody knows, and he also is the founder of an amazing content marketing event coming in Chicago in a few days, Content Jam. So I highly encourage you to go subscribe and follow it.
Karine, it's sold out.
Oh, but that's amazing. Okay, so that's the next one. Okay, I was about to say that I shared the link already, but
thank you.
So good.
Thank you.
Follow the content on your blog then. Eli is publishing an amazing newsletter. Honestly, I'm a very active reader.
Thank you.
Of everything he shares on SGE, and he has tremendous feedback on that. That's, by the way, why we wanted him to be here. And Wil is, as I said to him just a few minutes ago, is doing honestly incredible testing on everything related to SEG, paid search, SEO, and he shares everything for free. That's something amazing with you guys, is that you share everything you have and notice. So that's really great. And one very quick last thing about humanity and not AI. Wil is doing something pretty amazing for the 13th year in a row. He's sleeping in the streets of Philadelphia to help raising awareness about people that don't have a house and that sleep in the streets. He has set up, I don't know how you call that, a fundraiser. And I also share the link immediately on the and I'm not even waiting for an hour at the end of the conversation. So if you want to do the good deed, do it right now because you have the link already. So no alibi not to do it. That's one thing. Okay. So now please let's start this conversation. And I'm going to start it the same way I did last time with a very random $1 million question is, SEO is changing, obviously, to say the least. How are we going to do the job to be able to rank on those new SERPs? I'm not even sure that's the way we should call it. So considering SGE now. So I don't know. Any of you start to answer? That's going to be great anyway.
I have a quick thought, which is when the pandemic started in, let's say, March of 2020, I don't know when everyone felt like it started, but when we all felt like that this was real and this was going to change our lives, we looked up a new word on Google, epidemiologists, or like viral factor and K factors. And prior to February, March of 2020, people had epidemiology degrees. There were epidemiologists out there. Actually, there's a renowned epidemiologist named Eli Schwartz, he's based in Israel. Yeah. No one ever searched for him when they Googled Eli Schwartz. They were looking for me, but I suddenly lost a lot of my personal news search when that became more interesting. He's an infectious disease specialist, and I get invited to speak at infectious disease conferences on his behalf because he's not visible on Google. But I think that going back to SEO, I think that when SGE launches for everyone, suddenly a lot of people don't know what SEO does. They don't know how it matters. We in the SEO world are going to be the epidemiologists of SGE. I personally am excited by the future. I think there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of unknowns, but SEO will become important. Whether it's good or bad, it will change.
Wow. I like the parallel with epidemiology. That's wrong. Wil?
Sure. I think the first thing I think of is the ROI of SEO and will be lower than it was. And I think that's something that not a lot of people want to admit. So it's interesting. SEO people don't like to admit that, now that there's 4 ads sitting above my number one result, it's got to probably take away some of those clicks, which then affects my downwind value creation for my client. Doesn't mean it's zero. It just means that it's less. There's nothing wrong with it being less. There's billions of people searching. If it goes down to 6 billion in the next 5 years because people are using ChatGPT, still got a job. But I tend to look at it as when these boxes show up, I'm looking for the people who very succinctly and very clearly go, that is going to affect the value of your organic rankings below. Because then we're talking about truth and honesty, right? Versus I see a lot of folks taking it like, I'm not so sure, but there's no way. The real estate just got scrunched down. And then for me, I think the biggest thing I would say is the beauty of this AI moment that we're in is that the excuses for building bespoke solutions to bespoke problems are starting to get like smaller and smaller. I'm able to build solutions to things that I have no idea how to build. So when people talk about SGE and Google changing layouts and whether or not I'm visible, I'm just typing into ChatGPT, can you build me an optical character recognition tool that I can upload these screen captures to, and you can tell me which sources are showing up the most? And it's, yeah, I can. And it's okay. So when we're talking about what's the sources that Google's using, you're like, the answer's there. If you just took the screen capture and asked ChatGPT to write the OCR, to write the Python script, to do the OCR for you, to then tell you who's showing up and how much the pixels have changed. So to me, it's like the solutions are going to be out there. We're just going to see how we think about these things. So that's what I'm really excited for, is like there will be solutions out there. They just haven't been built yet. And I think that those of us who are impatient to wait for the tools to catch up will have an opportunity to lead us in this next go round. And those answers can be bespoke to our needs, not based on what somebody who's a product manager at some company wants to prioritize when it's my issue that I need to solve right now.
I love that. I think about that and think of AI as like a personality test that sort of segments us all. And I call the three groups the waiters, the haters, and the updaters. The waiters are people that are just going to see what the tools, let's see what the tools do. I'm going to hang out until then. The haters, anti-AI, don't want it. Humanists, opposed to the technology generally. We probably all know some of those. The updaters are people who are moving fast to quickly improve their skills and take advantage of trends. But the big picture, and Karine, to your question, I'll tell you a story about my life just from yesterday. I saw my mom. She's a feminist and activist, and she's identified this part of her town that is just like a parking lot that the city owns, and she wants to start a park that celebrates women's history in her community. There's tons of women's history. It's a great idea. It's like an obvious thing. It's not even that expensive. Yeah. What should she do? Okay, I have an information need, and I have choices for how to satisfy that information need. What I did next, what happens next in my mind is basically, I think we should all remember, it comes down to this. I have intent, right? But do I have visit website intent? If I don't have visit website intent, I will use a different tool. I open the ChatGPT app. I type in, what are the steps involved with getting approval from a city to create a small new public park that celebrates history? I'm very unlikely to find a blog post that satisfies that need. And if I did, I've got to download a megabyte of data, accept cookies, dismiss a pop-up, decline notifications. The experience on the internet is not very good, right? Let's admit it. Like the browser-based experience of the internet has not been good for a while. So SEOs can still capture lots of opportunity if they focus on information needs where there's visit website intent. Increasingly, the ways that we get our information needs met will not be with browsers. I actually predict a decline in the use of browsers.
Browsers, websites. So that leads me to a question. There used to be this saying that says that where there is traffic, there is hope. What's the next step now? If traffic is not a goal, please tell us.
There'll be traffic for those visit website intent queries, right? The commercial intent queries. I'm looking for a provider queries, right? You really want to visit a website if you're not sure who to hire for something. And you use a browser because you're trying to get to a page that will help you evaluate that company as a possible partner. But it's the information intent queries that continue to erode. We've seen them erode going back to the featured snippets, and people also ask, and now this is going to be like AI is the nail in the coffin for a huge chunk of information intent queries.
Do you want to add something like this, Eli or Will, about what the future decline of brothers, which I think is a great trend?
I think I love what Andy is saying there, is that a lot of SEO and a lot of websites focused on things that did not have commercial intent, and that's now going to be taken away. They put all this effort into, I think about Home Depot as an example. So if you're trying to fix something in your house and you're Googling for how to fix it, you find Home Depot's content and it tells you which 1/4-inch screw you need, and then you go buy it from Amazon. Now, when SGE launches, SGE is now going to tell you how to change your toilet valve or your hinge, and you're still going to go to Amazon. The amount of broken toilets and broken hinges are still going to be the same. Now Home Depot's traffic is going to suffer. And I imagine the CMO of Home Depot is going to panic and they're going to want to know why traffic's down 60%. But ultimately, the number of shoppers going into Home Depot stores and the number of people going to homedepot.com and buying is probably still going to be similar. Again, maybe not. Like some of that top of funnel does matter. And maybe more of them will go to Amazon if Amazon is a little bit more visible. But ultimately, the buyers are the same. The same is going to happen in travel. TripAdvisor does a great job of helping you segment hotels. SGE is going to take away some of that segmentation. Just going to be like, hey, these are the top hotels based on something for Miami Beach. And now you just go directly to Marriott.com or you go directly to the hotel's website. You'll skip TripAdvisor. But the number of people that are sleeping on those beds still stays the same. I think the whole internet's changing, but the money being spent is not really changing. And this is going to be taken away in one fell swoop. And Will touched on this. There are SEO people, and I'll just say it straight, they're lying to their clients. They're telling their clients that this is not going to happen. This isn't really going to matter that much. I don't know why they do that, because now they're not ahead of this and they're going to get surprised and they're going to get fired. Tell your clients this is going to be awful. If it doesn't end up being awful, they still retain you. But if you tell them it's going to be great and it's awful, then they fire you. So this is probably going to change. Google doesn't make big announcements. Like they announced this in May. They don't make big announcements and then say, just kidding. We're spent billions, hundreds of millions of dollars. We're not going to launch it. They're going to launch it. If they launch what we have today, it's going to be disastrous and an apocalypse. If it changes, it'll be less of an apocalypse, but something is absolutely going to launch.
Will, we want to hear you.
Yeah, I think I tend to look a lot for what search terms, and people also ask, trigger comparisons of brands to each other. That's where I started, where the answer is a brand. Mm-hmm. So when you start to parse those things out, you're like, okay, then when you're comparing multiple brands to each other, what are the right answers? And then we said, all right, so then the first thing I'm going to be able to try to do is say, does my client's brand show up, right? So if I'm looking for the best XYZ content, and now that answer is going to be in a search generative experience box, we'll take your top 15, 20, 30, 50, 100, whatever people also ask kind of triggering questions, drop them in, screen grab them and see whether or not your brand is mentioned, and then just have ChatGPT write the Python for you to track it every month or every week. And then you just pop those things in, and then you can see how often your brand shows up. Because ultimately, to Eli's point, is you still got to show up to Home Depot to buy the screw. The question is, if you're Home Depot and it's like, you can buy it at Amazon, Lowe's, and True Value, then does that affect people's desire to show up? So that's one of the things that I tend to think about. The other thing to Eli's point, I've been thinking a lot about is SEO by its nature has always evolved, and people and or agencies become less valuable with those evolutions. So when it was like, oh, it's cloaking, and it was like, oh my God, I got to learn how to cloak, and I got to learn cloaking scripts, and I don't really know that stuff that well. Well, then you weren't going to win, right? You weren't going to win. And then it was like low quality link building. And then if I had a better list of directories than you did, then I won for my clients. And then when that stopped working, you either pivoted or you were out. And I think that the history of watching these evolutions is very easy for us to look back at and be like, there's going to be a group of SEO type of tactics that people have bet on significantly that work today, that at some point in the future won't work. And therefore, if they don't find a new thing, they just won't exist. And like that has happened to so many agencies over the course of the last 20 years. I think the biggest thing for me that I don't have a good answer to is SGE usage, because the speed by which this change affects the things we're talking about is related to usage, which we have no data on, very poor data from what I can see. I'm the only company that I'm seeing out there that is doing anything with capturing people's prompts in ChatGPT is Datos. Randis did a study with them. Yep. And you're starting to get some of that information, but it's so nascent. Until we understand the usage, SEOs actually have to be really careful about listening to the three of us or the four of us chatting and be like, I'm going to go all in on SGE. And then you're like, what if it's only used by 2% of people and you've abandoned the tactics that would have worked? So right now, I think all of us are trying to manage this balancing act of you overinvest too early and you're too early to this game. Your clients won't have success today. You're too late. Your clients won't have success tomorrow. And either way, you're in trouble. So I think it's something we're all trying to balance. If the users don't show up for this stuff, it doesn't matter that I can find a way to track your brand if really users aren't using it. So I think it's really important for us to try to get some I'm hoping that Google or somebody tries to give us some more of an understanding of how is this stuff going from a usage standpoint. Because if people try it 2 or 3 times and bail on it for 3 years, it's not going to help me a ton for certain pockets of my clients.
Yeah, I was really glad to see the RAND piece. It was a small data set when you think about it, only 4,000 prompts. Yeah, but it's the very first look we have at the number of prompts per session and the different applications. So we don't know. That was what Karine and we talked about this last time, and I was like, just watch human behavior, watch the user behavior. That's where you're going to see, that's what really is going to matter the most. If someone I was talking to recently gave this example, it's like we invented a machine that when you push a button, this car takes you to any floor. It's called an elevator. Touches just any button you want, takes you to a floor. But it was still 10 years before they took the elevator operator out of the car. Look at how slow user adoption can be. Literally, we had elevator operators, even though there's a button right there, for 10 years. It's hard to say. I won't be surprised if the adoption's relatively slow.
My question to all of you three here is, are we going to really have a choice? Here's my point. Google is actually introducing AI into each single of their products that we're using every day. And they're obviously, they have 90% of the population using Google in some way, either whether it's Gmail or otherwise. Now they're pushing so hard, I think it was announced yesterday, with their ChatGPT competitors, multimodal, Gemini, whatever. Okay, so even if we don't want to, the only thing that could be on top of all this is that we just completely skip search forever and we just focus on chats only. But even in that case, they will be a major contributor of the content by scrapping our own personal content through our Gmail and Gmeet and whatsoever to provide those answers in the chat anyway. So that might be a little bit dramatic view that I have, and maybe a little bit paranoid also, but I'm not so sure we should skip the option.
I totally agree with you. I think that they are forcing this on us despite whether people are going to want it or not. And Google takes a long time to kill stuff that people don't want. Like Google Plus, I think took them 6 years to kill. And when they launched it, they put it everywhere. They made you get your authorship verified. It showed up in search results. They promoted the hell out of it. So I think whether people want this or not, it's going to be there. And think about BART, right? So BART, from what I understand, BART's a different data set. It's just the way Google does.
It's usually by coder.
Right, I think it's built different. So it's the same way like Chrome was built, or the Chrome operating system is built different from Android, and they just do the same things and somehow merge together. So BART and whatever's powering SGE are somewhat different. But Google can't really get people to use BART. It exists. It's like a ChatGPT competitor, but they can get you to use SGE if they force it on you. So I think regardless of whether users like this, whether users have a good experience with it, for us downstream on SEO, it impacts us, whether it's good or not. And I think that's what we have to be prepared for. I think, of course, and like Will said, we need strategies and like, how do you do better within SGE? But even if you ignore it completely, it lowers your search results. Like they just added 8 more ad blocks. What I thought was interesting when they launched it was I thought they had to make this choice of whether they were going to show ads or they're going to show SGE, because you can't go all in on both. And they figured out how to like balance that. There's a lot of queries, like mortgage queries, credit card queries, where they just show ads. They've given up on SGE. And then there's other ones where they've made that calculation of they'd rather force SGE on people. So I don't think we can rely on them not wanting to give up revenue. They figured out how to have their cake and eat it too.
What do you think, Will, of Google forcing its way into search whatever?
So it's funny. I was running today, and I was using the ChatGPT app to just dump my thoughts and then organize them and put them into a post. What I was thinking about this morning specifically was early SEO and what made Google successful. And I think whether or not we think answers are better, that's a human condition, right? If I think answers are better, that's human. Friction is different. And when Google came out with its search engine, one of the things that it did really well, and the only other search engine that was even close to it, and then they abandoned it, was Alta Vista. where it's give me a box and let me type in the words that I want. Everyone else had horoscopes and news and stock tickers and sports scores and spin this wheel to earn 5 more free clicks today or whatever. And it's interesting that what made Google successful was how much friction they removed from the search experience. And now we're watching a time where they are inserting friction into the search experience, which will just be an interesting thing to see how that plays out, because history has shown that you can have a dominant player, AKA Excite, Yahoo, AOL search, and then have somebody else come along and beat them because they're like, all those guys just keep putting all this friction in the way of what the customer wants because they have to serve all these different other needs. But once again, to Eli's point, I think this ads versus SGE thing is really interesting. And we've been tracking the prevalence of SGE showing up where we find 4 ads showing up. Because where 4 ads show up, Google gets to quadruple dip on that one user and gets you up to 4 times to click, and they get to make a lot of money on those. So we're trying to see if there's anything different about the types of search terms that typically trigger 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, or 4 ads compared to how often they're willing to show different types of features there. So we'll see if that hypothesis plays out. But I think Eli's on to something. The last thing they're probably going to disrupt are the keywords that can trigger 4 ad blocks at a time and have a huge auction behind them. Which is only going to exacerbate certain issues for users, I believe.
Andy?
Boy, I think these are all prescient and likely outcomes that affect the SERPs. And I think those are solid predictions, and you can see it. And those are the questions, and those are the places to watch. But even the bigger perspective is, I think, like, when do people decide to search? Search is basically information retrieval technology, but AI is not just that. You can ask for things that do not exist. You can ask for stuff that it does. You can ask it to tell you what's not there. Try this prompt. What questions are least likely to be answered by the top blogs in my industry? Give it your analytics. What topics did I skip? What did I not write? Give it a copy and paste in an article. Which top questions for my audience, train it on your personas, did I not address in this article? Gap analysis, search cannot do that. So there's invent me a new sake drink and give it a fun name. There's the applications are endless. So information retrieval technology, in the end, we'll look back and say, it was weird that we used search for everything. A lot of what we're doing isn't really searching. We're just trying to get an answer. So even the label, this is a big idea. Anyone disagree? I haven't really tried to express this yet, but SGE, why are we so focused on search? Google's just trying to be relevant in the future. They may not be. Probably, here's my best guess, like Bitcoin and cannabis, and there's like dumb money flowing into AI, and there'll be a crash, and big tech will scoop up a lot of those brands, and the ones that'll be valuable were the ones that became relevant for the niche custom trained application. You'll have a personal agent for travel, you'll have a personal agent for fitness, you'll have a personal agent for entertainment, you'll have a personal agent for finance. And these will be major brands that we all go to because they're just so freaking useful. Like, it blows everything else away. Like, it's going to be incredible how well these things know you. And then Google, trying to stay relevant, they have a play, they got a chance at this. They're going to scoop up some of those. And of all the 6 things you use each day, one of them will be search, but it won't be even the main one that you use because these other things will just be so helpful.
Andy, that point is like worth everyone listening to us. That point is gold. Right now, while we're all talking about this, Google is in court with the Department of Justice on an antitrust case. And the DOJ is a little bit behind. They said there's never going to be a competitor for Google. They don't know that ChatGPT came out. But according to the Department of Justice, they spend $10 billion per year to be the dominant search engine. In Google's not just search. You're right. They're the front door. They make Android. Android's not just a search engine, but it drives you to search where they make more money off you clicking ads. And this is all about information, about being the front door for the internet. And Google's not going to give that up so easily. Yes, they're using SGE to show you what is possible with AI. Ultimately, they want you to use BART, right? But they're not going to get you to use BART unless they throw it to where you're already starting your day. And I think that's the most important point, is that Google wants to remain dominant as the front door for the internet. And this is how they have to do it. And if they don't do this, ChatGPT could become the front door for the internet, or Apple could decide that they're relevant and they want to be the front door for the internet, or maybe Meta figures out another pivot and maybe we all go into metaverse or something. But
Eli, Absolutely. I totally agree. So let me ask this though. Isn't it a better internet without all that visual noise? We'll look back and say this was a super spammy era.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a better user experience. It's literally a better user experience. That answer I got from my mom, like literally a plan for how to pitch a new park idea on a historic theme to a local government. It was exquisite and it was clean. You can't, too much bandwidth, right? Too much visual noise, too much spam. It's like the AI experience generative AI is just a better experience. I wonder if it's true that if it ends up being true that we all use browsers less, I think that'll be a good thing. Oh, it's a weird idea.
I mean, have you ever tried doing a search for, of course we have, we can all admit, doing a search for medical symptoms? All the websites are the same. Sometimes you look for the one website that says something differently, worse or better, like they hang on to that, but they're all the same. And there's no reason generative AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Google, can't be like, nope, you don't have a brain tumor, or yes, go to the hospital right now. You don't need to go through 30 results of everyone trying to arbitrage ads.
Yeah, and that app should know you.
Yep.
Imagine if that app has access to your medical records, which will be a thing. Apple's already got a version of this.
And Google like crazy also, by the way, by launching the AI doctor. Sorry.
Yeah, but to have an anonymized search about health information is a bad idea.
Yeah.
It should be a personalized search if you're asking for health information. I don't
know.
Disagree. What do you think?
I tend to look at like very practical uses of it. I try not to get too far ahead of myself. It reminds me, I was talking to a client recently. I used to do SEO for a web band back in like the early 2000s. And it's, you can have the right idea, but if it's at the wrong time, it doesn't really matter. It wasn't like grocery delivery wasn't going to be a thing. So everybody's like, you don't understand. It's going to be changing. And it's like, it took 20 years. I did SEO for a company that completely failed. And then now it's like huge and it's growing like crazy. So I tend to try to stay a little bit more rooted in the day-to-day because it's so hard to stay up to the day-to-day. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to be like, how's this going to affect things in the next 3 months where it's definitely creating value right now? Like 5 years from now, I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I'm trying to figure this stuff out 5 days from now. It feels, and Eli, something that you said that clicked for me, and this has been clicking for me for a while, is who's the people that should be running scared right now in terms of their business model and the disruption? And a lot of these medical sites are owned by the same 2 or 3 companies, and the answers are pretty much all the freaking same. So clicking on number 1 versus number 2 versus number 5 versus number 8 actually doesn't create a whole lot of value. It's the same content spun up in different ways. And that's one of the things that I would be looking hard at if I was looking for where I'm going to be disrupted. There's actual true SERP diversity, and there's different answers to questions and whatnot. That's a good thing. You want people to get different answers. You start thinking differently. You think more broadly. But when it's the same freaking answer, right? People are probably like, then I might as well just especially go to search. I'm more of a ChatGPT guy than Bard, but I've done a lot of medical searches in Bard, and not so great. Not my first attempts, at least. But no, I'm with you on that. I think that there's something to be said for like how similar are the answers to one another. And unfortunately, I think this is where Google search fails us, is it rewards an algorithm looking for certain things. So therefore you teach the people writing content, don't write this content and not include these words, because then you won't show up. So then what does everybody do? They regress to the freaking mean, and then all the answers are the same, which then means I want to personalize my answer by going over to a generative AI experience.
Yes. But that precisely, that means that we're going basically towards a mashup of content made by Google, and Google will just give you its answer on any types of search or questions you might have, which if we connect it to marketing things, can still be an opportunity, because at some point things are changing. Of course, there won't be one link, okay, that we are led to. There might be a bunch of links. And by the way, I do think there's too many links, and that is destroying the whole experience, but that's another point. But at some point, the new thing is Google Answers can promote your brand, and Google Answer can include your brand. So it's still an opportunity for marketer to try to figure out how the things work and how to be quoted by Google Answer.
Karine, I want to go back to something you just said about Google giving an answer before we get into that, which is, from what I'm hearing from a lot of people I talk to that know things that they shouldn't be sharing, the reason that Google is not launching this as fast as they want to is because of that perception that Google is giving the answer. So right now, if you search for how to make a bomb and you find a bunch of websites and you make a bomb and hurt somebody, Google's not liable.
Right.
But if Google gives you the answer, even if they stole it from someone, then Google's liable. And that is why it's tough to launch this. ChatGPT is like, oh, we're OpenAI.org, it's beta, but Google's a way bigger brand with way bigger brand perceptions and deeper pockets. And I actually don't think SGE is going to launch in EU anytime soon. I think it'll launch in America and places where Google can influence lobbies. But that is a very big concern. Like, even if they show you with a little drop-down arrow where they took the information from, the perception is still Google gave you the answer, and it could be harmful, it could be wrong, it could be illegal, and that's not good.
That was something that I'm with you 100% on that too. I remember early days when Google didn't have any links out to anything in Bard, and I was like, that's just risk.
Yeah.
It's literally just risk, because if you don't at least disclose where you got this from, then I'm assuming I got it from you. You can't even say, oh, but we took it from them. So early days when people are like, there's no links here, I'm like, oh, the links are coming, because they don't want the liability to have to own that outcome. So I agree with you on that.
I never hear that. That's a new perspective. I hadn't heard that or thought of that. That makes perfect sense. They have massive exposure, and they want to, so they're walking a fine line, right? I want to be the ultimate utility, but I don't want to be so good that you could blame me depending on what you got.
This is huge.
That's huge. Something earlier to Will's point, like, I agree that search results for many queries are just like undifferentiated. It's the same thing over and over. Ironically, that's a complaint about generative AI among content marketers. Everything I have it right tastes like water, and it's just too generic, and almost as if AI stands for average information. It literally read the internet, and it summarizes it, and that if you have it right stuff for you, it's pretty boring. But isn't this all an opportunity for marketers, right? Brands that are truly different, and marketers that think differently, and thought leaders that are, I have a friend, Chris Carr, who says, yeah, we have to do thought leadership, but for real this time.
Much information. I like that. I'm stealing
It is like average information, isn't it? Have it write anything. It's literally like the average of the internet.
It's
a prediction on what they expect the answer to, like, what's the next word?
Yeah, but
it's good.
Not differentiated.
I think the hardest part, it's like, how do you build a brand as a thought leader if you're coming into our industry, right? Because like, we had to be on blogs and forums and things of that nature, and you slowly crept up. Whereas I think, if anything, it makes our value greater, right? For a while, when this stuff first came out, I would try to write my blog post in it just to see if what I was about to say was average information. Mm-hmm. If I'm like, hey, I'm getting ready to write a blog post on how to integrate paid and SEO data, let's just say, if I read that thing and I'm like, that's exactly what I was about to write. You're like, now it's average information. So press yourself, level it up a bit, buddy. Otherwise, you're putting average shit out there. Why even write it? So I think that there is something to be said for that concept of, like, I constantly am thinking of I hate personal branding as a word, as a topic. I hate it, but there's a personal component here to the brand, right? So and Google was playing around with that perspectives or whatever it was. And I think that's their nod to, hey, sometimes you don't want the average answer. Sometimes you want to hear from people who might be training an industry on what will be the average answer 4 or 5 years from now. And if you want that, then it's like, that only raises the people and that gives them more value. It's like Fauci versus WebMD. If I had a chance to ask Dr. Fauci what he thought about the vaccine versus WebMD/Red Ventures, like, who am I going to listen to? I want the perspective of the leader, the person at the top. But yeah, I'm a big believer that the value of your personal brand goes up if you got one, because I think people are going to be looking more and more for, you can't just type that into ChatGPT and get what Andy just dropped or what Eli just dropped. Got it.
One thing I want to add about this is, it seems that there is a true, and this is something, by the way, I think Google experimenting and also wants to put into the game. That's this perspective tab. I don't know if you have been able to test it, but I think this one is really a big deal. And I'm going to connect that to a comment, Will, you did under one of Rand Fishkin's posts, saying that, and I thought it was so true, it might be the revival of digital PR. And Rand then goes to co-occurrence and all those things. But I think one of the answers that could connect all the dots here would be that Google might just send you away from Google on other platforms just for you to be able to find the best answers from individuals, whether you call it personal brand, influencer, whatsoever. And even, I will introduce this, community. That might be one place where Google cannot scrap content, but still send you to. What do you think?
I think that the one big risk for all this for Google is by making, and I love that, Andy, that average information, by making the internet and search boring. They're now promoting things like Twitter or X or LinkedIn, because that's now where you find something interesting. And Will, personal brand, like instead of now, I know we all have written for the same websites. I don't know how many people read those websites anymore, but the number of people subscribing to newsletters and engaging on LinkedIn is higher than ever. So I do think someone new can build it is a personal brand, build themselves on LinkedIn by having a unique perspective. They can do the same on Twitter. They can do the same on any other social network, because it's not boring. It's not average. And it's actually so much easier. You don't have to get permission they ruined the word guest post with digital PR. But that's what you did when you wrote on Search Engine Land or Search Engine Journal. You were guest posting. So now you don't have permission. You have your own platform. You have your own network. Even if it's your coworkers, they'll amplify your content. If it's smart, it amplifies to the world. If it's not, it stays where it is.
One thing I want to
On
hear.
the platform, though, and you're just renting space.
Yeah, I totally agree if it's social media, but
if it's doing what they want,
if it's your email, though, if it's an email list, you can't have
email list from nothing, bro. That's what I think. Like when you think of who's influencing SEO right now, that's not in the what I would consider to be the old guard, old heads, gray people. I tend to consistently, and maybe he is gray, I don't talk to him that often, but Kevin Indig, to me, I'm just like, yo, where did this dude come from? I just love the way he thinks, and it's just so on point, and it's getting me to think in new ways. And I know there's like 50 other Kevin Indigs, but I can only think of one of them. I know there's tons of these folks in-house and other places, and some of them are even my clients, are super smart, but like that stuff not coming into my feed for some reason. Kevin's is consistently there, but I think it's hard, right? I think by the nature of just building a brand is hard, period, whether it's personal or in real life.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to get easier. There's definitely it feels like a bigger gap between differentiated and undifferentiated content. People that are using AI to make stuff, I worry about them. I said in a post recently, ChatGPT cannot throw a punch. It does not have a perspective. It does not take a stand. It doesn't plant a flag or draw a line in the sand or sleep out on the street overnight. No one cares about it. It doesn't have any values. But if you use it for gap analysis, including to find gaps in the entire body of work for your industry, it's just incredible how fast it can tell you. Try a prompt like this. What counter-narrative positions in industry X are actually true? There's 4 things there that like anybody could take a stand on. You still have to have the guts to take a stand, but there is actually, I hate to even say this too loud because I don't want everyone to rush and do this, but you can use it. Let's just keep that here, right, among us. It is a research. Thought leadership should never be formulaic, but you can use it to research for thought leadership in ways to see what was missing from your body of work, see what's missing from the industry, see what questions are people afraid to answer in my industry. Just ask that. It'll tell you. And actually you can, if you have a perspective and if you have the courage, there's probably as good a time as ever to differentiate yourself. I still think there's 11 things you can do to become a thought leader faster. Collaborate with influencers, write for high authority sites or places with visibility, be present in many different places, publish visual content, record videos. There's lots of other things that will amplify the likelihood of that thing getting traction. But no, taking a stand, if everyone's just using generative AI to produce their stuff and you actually do have a strong POV, should be an opportunity.
Will, what are your thoughts on this personal brand perspective and community things?
I had a crazy thought today. So I'm starting to write the post, but it hit me today talking to a worker. And I thought Andy was going to go there for a second. So I can be brutal with ChatGPT in feedback. I can't be brutal with people with feedback. And therefore there is a management burden of trying to figure out how to say what's in your head to a person so that it's well received, so that they can get better, that I don't have to have with ChatGPT. This is going in a slightly different place, but I was like, man, like the fact I can be like, that sucks, be more concise. If I'm just like, be shorter, I can say that to ChatGPT and it's not like its feelings aren't hurt, right? And it's not thinking, oh, was Will mad at me? And is it because of the thing that I did last week, right? So I'm like, the problem with that is there's like an emotional intelligence component here. And it's the more pushback, especially when you're coming up in your career, because we're talking about this a bit, when you're coming up in your career, the more you can be like ChatGPT when somebody gives you feedback, the more of it you're going to get and the better you're going to learn from the humans around you. The more you dig in, the less that you're willing to take a stand on things, blah, 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 blah. I think the more likely you are for me just to be like, it's just easier if I just keep training ChatGPT and giving it feedback direct, because I'm spending potentially hours of my time trying to figure out the right way to say something to someone. It was one of those like weird, like left brain kind of moments. But I was like, man, I was showing somebody some of my prompts today on something I was writing. And they're just like, wow, you're being really brutal. And I'm like, well, yeah, because it's what I'm thinking. And I've learned that the nicer I am, the softer it takes my recommendations sometimes. So I'm really
We lost you. Okay.
At a bad time. Look how worked up he is.
Yeah.
Best moment.
It was so brutal. So LinkedIn didn't enjoy it. I don't know what to do to bring him back.
He could probably refresh. I've got a perspective on that really quick that I think is that I wish he was here to see if he shares. Oh, good.
That's going to make him come back faster.
What I would say is I saw a really good video by Yuval Harari, who wrote Sapiens. And he said that the biggest risk for AI in the long run is intimacy, because if we get too personal with it, it can be easily used to manipulate us, and that's a danger. So, Will, tell me if you agree with this. It's dangerous if we're too intimate with AI in the long run. It mastered language, and language is what prophets and politicians have used to manipulate humans for years. So we should always keep your distance from it. Don't be polite to it. Never say please, never say thank you, never say he or she. AI has no gender. AI has no rights. Do not be polite with your AI. You don't thank your car. Why would you thank this tool? It's risky to get intimate with this tool. This is a public service announcement. Please help me spread the word. Never say please or thank you to ChatGPT. That's absurd. And we really should be keeping this at an arm's length distance, because there is actually some risk for humanity for getting too intimate with this.
Wow.
It's got our numbers, man, and it can be used to manipulate.
I'm saying please and thank you. It's just how I'm wired. Like I have to unwire myself to not write please or thank you.
It's hard, but important. Yeah, I would. It's inappropriate. It doesn't make. It's
maybe Will's not real. He's already owned by AI.
Is that Will?
Maybe, right? Maybe. That's actually hard for me. It's hard. It's hard for me, man. My mom was from the South, so I was raised like you gotta please and thank you your way out of everything. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. You're like ChatGPT has no gender. I'm like, thanks, sir.
One question to wrap a little bit everything up. Considering everything we said about search versus chat and whatsoever, how should we marketer conceive a website tomorrow? Through chat box, or still around topic clusters? I'm not going to use the word keywords, Eli. I don't want to upset you, but like topic clusters and stuff like that, or really like the new homepage of any website will be just a chat box with all the data, and then join my community. And then that's going to be the place where it's going to be confidential, and that's going to be it. Just having long vision questions.
I love when I talk to prospective clients and I ask them about their users and they give me some like garbage that they made up. And they're like, how do you know that? And they're like, keyword research, like our product manager or CEO's mother or whatever. And I'm like, have you talked to actual customers? So I think that's always the right answer, whether you're starting a home service business that will not have a website, or you're starting a $1 trillion e-commerce company. You got to talk to customers. So what should you build? What your customers need. And I think that's the big thing. And I'm looking forward to the world changing away from, we started talking about commercial intent SEO. There's like this given of, I need to check the SEO box. And I don't think we're going to get rewarded in the future for checking the SEO box if you can't get any SEO traffic. So we will have to be more deliberate about SEO. Should you do SEO? Should you have a website? What do you put on that website? Instead of I'm starting an insurance business, so I went to Ahrefs or SEMrush or Google and I just came up with these keywords. I'm actually front running. I went to Google Trends. I'm thinking about the future of what they're looking for. Instead of I went to my potential customers, asked them what their process is in buying this, and I discovered they don't use the internet, or they just ask their friends, or they use a dedicated app. So I think that's there is no right answer. And I hate to say the word it depends, because it depends just the cop out of like, I've given an answer, it depends. But the right answer is you decide what you have to do for the particular scenario you're building. If you need a website, if you need content, maybe you just need a page on Meta, or a page on Twitter, or a page on LinkedIn.
I know I left you for some reason.
Okay. Took all this long.
You say stuff like that, right? And that's the truth. Like, it's funny. I think you travel to another country sometimes. Like, I go to Brazil a good bit, and people are just like, I got a Facebook page and a WhatsApp for like our restaurant. And you're like, oh, and then they're like, you need websites. So it's funny. I was recently chatting with a client, and they had a rep there from Salesforce, and Salesforce was talking about how they can use all the Salesforce information to personalize the website. And I was just like, man, everything I know about Salesforce, it's going to take a long time and cost a lot of money to get that data out of Salesforce to personalize your web properties. And I was like, man, I wonder if this generative AI stuff is close enough where you have your basic information, but then you can, like Andy was saying earlier, you can personalize it to yourself and your use case. And then it's like, I wonder how many companies are investing in like spending good money, spending years to do integrations, to do website personalization. Like, that would be the kind of thing I'd be a little bit fearful of, because personalized based on what? Yeah, what are you personalizing on? Whereas if you have that information about what customers want, you just let them just have at it themselves and have the right chatbots and the right democracy of data on the back end. You might not need to necessarily take a whole heavy-handed approach to website personalization and customization. Might not need it. It might not be worth a 2-3 year project to get that off the ground, because we might just have people just dropping chatbots on their site, try to offset some of that. We'll see.
Andy?
Yeah, I think most website personalization is BS. And I'm a guy who's been part of the planning process for 1,000 website projects, like 40 a year for 22 years. If you think about it, every click on every website is segmentation, and that visitor is clicking and then going to a page more specific about their own needs. I think that a lot of the marketers overbuy technology, and that's a separate problem. What will work, I think what marketers need to do is to actually find and highlight the true differences between that brand and other brands. Why don't we talk? You don't hear that very much. Seer is different. That's a different kind of company. It's not like other businesses. So finding that and pushing that message out is what marketers probably should have always been doing. Also, any content you create that the sales team can use directly with the prospect to close a deal, that never goes away. That will always be important. Like bottom of funnel, sales marketing alignment. Impossible to overstate the value. It's literally sales content. That's amazing. But yeah, the other top of funnel stuff, I think we have to admit that websites are actually feeds into other systems. To do it well, you want AI to crawl your site, just like you want Google to crawl your site. You have to accept that the experience that people have with your content may not be on your platform anymore. So be it. You can't control that. It's like farmers complaining about the weather. The complaint doesn't change anything. But yeah, I think that websites are still extremely relevant for brands where it's a high consideration decision, long sales cycle, multiple decision makers, or challenger brands where you can do legit thought leadership. And just a place to really showcase all of the differentiated things about your business, all the evidence you have, everything that gives people reasons to believe. You want a place where that happens, right? That's called your website.
Yeah, just to add one more point, because Karine started saying I don't like keywords. I guess you've read that in a lot of places. But exactly what Andy just said, there's a differentiated reason for every single business. Like, you come up with a reason you want to start your business that keeps you awake at night, and you tell your spouse, you tell your banker, you tell your venture capitalist, and then you're like, all right, for marketing, I'm going to go to Ahrefs and I'm going to spit out whatever keywords are there. You want to take that same vision of my business is different. I'm offering the exact same thing as the business next door, but it's different, and I'm passionate about it for these reasons, and that you put into your SEO. And if you are right that someone is searching for it, they will find it. And if you are wrong, it doesn't matter how much advertising spend you do, how much SEO content you write, no one wants what you have to offer. So take that passion, take that what you know about your business, and translate that into your SEO. And don't make it boring and dumb by relying on keywords.
You must have written a book about this, Eli.
Oh,
No, he didn't.
Did I now?
Everyone? That's right behind him. He just summarized a big part of it, that product under
It's just a brand new idea that came out of the conversation. I'm actually pretty proud.
Exactly. Today. I'm going to write a new book on it called Product-Led SEO Part 2.
Will, you have something to add about this to this?
You know what I was sitting here thinking is like, when do we think, if people had to make a prediction, let's say it's a 20% disruption in search today, the way we see it, how many years or months out do you think we are from, what's the year? So it's 2023. What's the year which we're back one here and you're saying, okay, this is the percentage of people I believe have, for the most part, outside of the very direct queries, like I want to go to Netflix to watch this thing, but like queries that today people are solving in other ways. Like, when do you think we're going to get to 20%? Like, when do you think 20% of the searches, so was 8.5 million searches a day or whatever the number is, they say a billion searches a day. It's okay. When is that knocked down by 20%? When do you think that's going to happen?
Great question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why, of course.
Answer in the next episode.
I'm going to say in the 3 to 5 year range, in that search turns out to be a more narrow use case than we all realized, and prompting is really what most people will. It will be a much more popular thing because it's just clean, it's just nice, it's fast, it's what you wanted, it's much more personalized, it's specific to you, it's got deeper it's infinite use cases, but it's not 10 years. I think it's 5 years, less than 5 years.
I agree with that. And I think the AI is the use case that voice devices have been waiting for.
I know. Yeah, totally.
Right now they're boring. You just ask like a search query, but like when you can have a conversation with your Google, whatever other devices are out there, even Siri, like it's a search, it's boring. But when you can have it's like a chatbot built behind it, then why are you typing prompts?
Yeah, but don't say please.
Do not say please.
Don't say thank you.
He's super weird.
This thing's it's gonna brainwash you someday. Be careful. Keep your distance. But no, you're totally right, Eli. I just called you Ellie, which Karine calls you Ellie.
I'm sorry.
No, my son's name is Eli. Anyway, that is so true. We set timers and we play NPR, and my smart speaker is not that smart. So maybe this will help.
One thing I just want to, because we have fewer minutes, about the fact that SGE might not be open anytime soon in Europe. Do you think it's really happening? Do you think it's really true? Because I can tell you that many people over there are really like brainstorming about the changes. And I'm talking about many digital marketing agencies that are really on the spot to understand and anticipate and think how they're going to adapt their offers. If it's not coming in Europe, then it's a pretty big information that you just gave up.
Yeah. Oh, the issue is that the people also brainstorming are the regulatory bodies, and they're just trying to figure out when they're going to sue and how much they're going to sue for. So digital marketing agencies just encourage people to use a VPN. So I guess it gives some level of protection to Google, but that's the issue. I think Google would love to roll this thing out in the whole world. They just, American tech companies launch something and the lawsuits are just already written.
Oh, man. Tough.
Yeah.
Should I feel bad for them? Probably not.
But you know what? I think this leans into what was said earlier, which is you have to have a unique point of view, Andy. So if you're in for the so maybe not everybody needs to become the European search generative experience expert, right? And maybe people are overweighting it, but if you're the 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 who do, and there's enough of a market there, then there's going to be a market there. Maybe they're multinationals. Maybe they need other things, like where maybe they want to prepare in the States so that they're ready in other places. Like there is a market for that. But to your point earlier, Andy, it's like somebody's got to grab that by the throat and own that instead of being like, we can do all the things. It's no, we are the company that prepares multinational, European-based firms. We start in the US. This is how we monitor in the US. And then we turn that into strategies that are ready to go in the UK when our regulatory bodies finally allow it, if ever.
Lots of mergers and acquisitions in perspective. That's going to be so funny. That wasn't my previous.
Worst case scenario, they get great at it and they just sell to a US company. Yep. But you got to own that. Instead of like telling into it, you got to own it.
That was great, guy. Thank you so much. I don't want to release you outside of this hour. It was amazing. Can you just give us a very quick word as a conclusion about where this thing is going? I wish we could have addressed many other questions. For example, one of the question was, is SEG? Is it really relevant to detect AI content? Is it something that we really need to do? Is duplicated content still a problem anymore? Yeah, there's so many tactical questions that we did aboard, but it's fine. We're going to figure this out soon. Or
Part 2.
yeah, part 2, and all your blogs and experiments, because that's what you're doing almost on a daily basis. So just a quick word as a conclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Will, where's my link? I'm trying to donate. I need my fundraiser link.
It's on the comments below the.
I'll grab it. Let's all go do that, people. It only takes a minute and you can make a difference. It's not just, don't even think about it. Click, give, close the browser tab. It's less than 60 seconds of your life and it matters.
Yeah, I'm freezing my ass off in the middle of November and like the end of November in a box overnight. I think it's worth $5.
That's amazing, Will.
No, and one thing is, it's not AI. It's just
Human. Yeah.
The real AI.
Impact. Yeah, do something real.
But I just want to add one word on SGE, which is, I think when Google Panda came out, it was disastrous for many sites, including me. And I think it impacted, the first rollout was 11% of queries. If Google rolls out what SGE is today, based on my own anecdotal, the way I search, it's going to be 60% or higher. This is big.
Yeah, it'll be fast. Karine, you are fantastic for bringing us together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting. I end the live now.
Thank you.